Mitch Keller shines again. The Pirates get back to basics, and how can they pick things up to even get remotely back to their April form throughout the remainder of May? We'll talk about all of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody. My name is Ethan Smith. That is Gary Morgan to my right. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day, usually on Mondays with Gary. But thank you for making me your first listen of the day every single day, Monday through Friday, here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And before we get into anything, the sponsor that we're going to be joining, not today, but I believe that you will hear about them on Wednesday. Very fun sponsor that I think you guys are all going to love. Very fun stuff. It's going to mainly be for clothing. So if you guys like clothing, that's going to be really fun. I will also probably be wearing said clothing on that Wednesday show. But Gary, once again, how are you, sir, after it's traveling season for you? You're just all over the place.
I'm tired. I'm playing catch up today, but I'm relieved to hear you're going to be wearing clothing on Wednesday.
Yes, it is a common misconception amongst the Locked On MLB faithful that I don't wear pants on these shows. I do wear pants on these shows, and I will be much more wearing pants on these shows thanks to the sponsor that we have on Wednesday. But right now, if you want to talk about somebody who's wearing the pants in the relationship, that would be Mitch Keller. Monday and Sunday, he has 2 starts. And there was 2 common themes with both of his starts, and I think us Pirates fans and listeners of this show know what the 2 common themes were. The first of the 2 was that the team entered on a losing streak going into both of his starts, and the second was he pitched 16 shutout innings of baseball over the course of 2 games. Not hard to look at. All you have to do is look at the scores and say, oh, okay, he went out there and pitched 16 shutout innings. I saw some people were upset that he didn't go the full 9 again on yesterday's game, and I was basically saying he can't physically do that. It's not Nolan Ryan anymore. You're not going to see a guy pitch 13 innings of shutout baseball in 1 game. It's just not going to happen anymore. But nevertheless, he has a career-high 13 strikeouts to no walks. He's only the 3rd pitcher in Pirates history to do that, I think. And then there was another thing that I saw that he was the first Pirates pitcher to do it in the live ball era. So I don't really know what stat is correct. It's like, either way, 13 strikeouts to no walks is absolutely phenomenal for Mitch Keller. But he is now almost to the 1-year anniversary of that national broadcast posting that thing where he had the worst ERA, the worst win percentage, the worst strikeout rate, the worst walk rate. Like, he was just terrible. And then we all remember he gets sent down last year. We didn't really know if Mitch was ever going to be the Mitch that we expected. And then he adds a sinker to his arsenal, Gary, and it has just worked wonders for him to the point where, as you've said on this show before, every start that he has, he just gets more expensive for Pittsburgh. And we've heard rumblings of extension talk with Mitch Keller already. How quickly do they need to get that done before he prices himself out of Pittsburgh if he continues on this tirade?
I mean, first of all, I feel bad for the fan base because they finally started getting a little bit of extension stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
They've been given some things, and now they don't necessarily understand that it's not going to be a rapid fire process here. I will say, take comfort in the fact that Ben Cherington openly is saying that he wants to get this done.
Yeah.
Mitch Keller has already confirmed for you that conversations have begun. Yeah, I keep saying he gets more expensive every time out, and he does. But also, I think Mitch is a pretty aware guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mitch knows that on another team, he probably is already out of strikes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. He was probably DFA'd last year if he plays like that on any other team.
Or at least move to the bullpen on a more permanent basis, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, kudos to the Pirates for having patience, but really kudos to the Pirates for sucking out loud for 3 straight years, where Mitch actually had room to develop into what he is. So, yes, get it done. I think it can be done. I think it can be done relatively reasonably. This isn't somebody you're going to sign for 8 to 10 years. This is somebody you're going to try to lock up for 5 or 6. He's got 2 more years of control. You probably want to buy 3 more, maybe 4 more. And I think you're talking like 5 or 6, start around 80, talk in that range. I don't believe he's going to even get what Hayes got.
I wouldn't think so either.
Now that's me right now. And if they wait until the off season, watch those numbers jump.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think they can let him complete a year in which it legitimately looks like he could be a Cy Young contender.
Oh yeah. And I mean, you're talking about him being in names right now in the National League amongst Clayton Kershaw, Spencer Strider. I think I saw yesterday after his start that he's tied for 11th in ERA with Framber Valdez in the entire major leagues. And just seeing the maturation of Mitch Keller is another thing that I want to emphasize to a lot of people, as we've seen Johan Oviedo and Roansy Contreras over the last couple of weeks kind of come back down to earth a little bit. And not saying that Roansy and Johan Oviedo are going to turn into Mitch Keller, but just look at how long Mitch Keller was with the Pirates before he even got to this point. The kid is 27 years old. It took him a while. It was not like one of those things that just happened overnight for him. It took a very long time.
I'll also throw in, it's kind of a misnomer that it's all about that sinker. The sinker was a line in history. Yes, it happened. They added a sinker. Yes, he worked with Clay Holmes. Yes, he worked with Oscar Marin. And it was Oscar's suggestion that he add it. One that he made almost a full year before it actually got added. So, what makes Mitch dangerous right now is that he has 6 pitches. He can throw any of them.
Yep.
Pretty much whenever he wants, in any count, and get whatever desired result he wants.
Oh, yeah.
And with each of them, he can change the speed. I mean, he can make it faster or slower if he feels like it. Just take a couple miles per hour, and that comes from working with Rich Hill.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything that happens in a career changes the arc if the guy is willing to accept it. And Mitch has been a sponge.
Yeah.
And he is right now truly one of the best pitchers in the league.
Yeah, and it's nice to see, and it's something that this Pirates team, with the month that they've had, they need. I mean, we talked about the Pirates in the rotation needing a guy that could go in and stop losing streaks. They haven't had a pitcher like this in quite a while. I mean, I would say the last name that would come to mind as far as a guy in the rotation that would stop things, like stop a losing streak, would probably be Joe Musgrove. I would say that would probably be like the closest comparison. But even Joe Musgrove wasn't pitching this well to start a season when he was in Pittsburgh. Now, obviously, he goes to San Diego, and you see some things a little bit differently. But I also think, as far as the extension talk goes, just from my point of view, Ben Cherington has to know that the Pirates over the last decade have watched the likes of Garrett Cole, Jameson Taillon, and Joe Musgrove all depart and go and see pastures that may have been greener or not greener for them in their other places. So it's probably an emphasis that he wants to keep Mitch here, on top of the fact that it makes his job building a rotation a ton easier. Knowing that he has a known commodity in the rotation now that is likely your best commodity, I think has to make his life a ton easier when he's making rotational decisions over the next few years.
It does. And even if he's pitching a little over his head right now and he settles in as a number 3 or something in your rotation, that's somebody that you want locked up.
Yeah.
And that's really all there is to it. You grew him, keep him. I don't know. I think I have to go back even further than Musgrove for somebody that really was your stopper type guy. And this is pathetic, but I'm going to go all the way back to Denny Nagel. I mean, that's probably the last time I felt this confident every time our perceived ace went to the mound.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you ask the outside eye, I mean, you would see the stats right now and people would say, oh, okay, he's pitching really well. But if you just mention the name Mitch Keller to an outside source, they're going to be like, that's your ace right now? And, I mean, again, like, he's just pitching out of his mind right now. You mentioned the 6 different pitches that he has. I think the favorite of them is the sweeper. I think that's like a new named pitch that all of a sudden came out of nowhere. I just call it basically a sliding curveball at this point. But I mean, he just uses that pitch so well. And then I think they mentioned on the show yesterday, or on the broadcast yesterday, that you had, I think he has like the highest rate of pitches in the heart of the zone or something like that. It was some really wild stat to where he's throwing the ball where hitters want to see it, and they just can't hit it because of the movement that he has, because of the command that he has, and ultimately, as you said, just the ability to change speeds on you. I mean, his sinker, I think, is where, like, 95, 96 right now, and then he goes to the sweeper, and it's around like 78, 79, maybe 80. It's a very big difference, and it's something that he is doing well, and it's something nice to see, too. And I think Austin Hedges, you also have to throw some flowers to him, too. I know a lot of people have kind of thrown him under the bus over this losing streak for whatever reason, but he's been very good for the maturation of all of these pitchers that we've seen pitch well, including the bullpen, where we saw Holderman and David Bednar pitch well, and David Bednar has arguably been the best closer in baseball.
Yeah, we should circle back there. That's why he didn't finish that game or even go any further. First, you mentioned the physical limitations of a pitcher, and I bet he probably could have done it. But you have 2 off days. You got, today, and you got Thursday this week. And David Bednar and Colin Holderman have not had an awful lot of excuses to pitch over the past, 10, 15 days due to the team's terrible performance. So when you get an opportunity to get them in a reasonably, close game, 4 runs is reasonably close, you get them in and you get the work done. And I think there was no reason to push it with Mitch. He had done enough. This is no longer the let's get him out of there while he feels good type thing that we've always done with Mitch Keller. Now it's let's get him out of there because he's such a stud we can't even imagine wasting an inning on him right now.
Yeah, and it's still May. I mean, it's still May. We need Mitch Keller to do this on a consistent... Well, let me rephrase that before I say that, because saying on a consistent basis at this level, that is nuts. That is, like, very, very, very high ceiling to ask of somebody to consistently do this over the course of a whole season. But as you mentioned, even if he does take, like, a minor step back, like if he just takes a tiny step back, he's still a sub-3 RA guy who's top 10 in the league in strikeouts. If he takes any kind of step back,
if he wants to be, that's the thing. I think that's what scares the league the most. I would imagine with Mitch Keller, if he wants to be a strikeout pitcher, he will be.
Yeah.
And if he wants to just hunt contact, he can do that too. I love where he's at right now. I mean, to me, he's right now the most impossible starting pitcher to game plan for in the entire league. You have no idea which Mitch Keller you're going to get. You don't even know which of his 6 pitchers he's going to choose to go with that day. He may only use 3 of them.
Yeah.
I mean, none of them will be what you thought. He may come out and do changeup heavy just because he feels like he needs to, and he can. It's crazy. And also the other thing, the sweeper that everybody's throwing. Nobody invented a new pitch. They just renamed Slurve.
Yeah, they just renamed it. Yeah.
That's all there is to it. So like everybody keeps talking about this brand new pitch. It's not. It's just a rename of something they used to slam together and call Slurve.
Yeah. And they're renaming pitches all the time. I mean, there was also a blunder on the part of, I believe, I forget what team it was, but they showed what the pitches were on the screen, and it was something that I cannot say on the show, but it was pretty hilarious. But before we get into more stuff about the Pittsburgh Pirates and how they need to, learn how to win when Mitch Keller isn't pitching the other 4 games, it takes a championship team to build the perfect car, and you do that with your parts too, and you build them with your vision part by part at ebaymotors.com. Because for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And right now, the Pirates have a very good engine with Mitch Keller. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. And to mention that sounds very depressing. It's like, how did the Pirates win without Mitch Keller? It's depressing to ask, but it's also a very valid question to ask, considering they have not done it for a minute. They have not done it for quite some time. You're looking at how the month of May is went, and they are 2-11, 2-12. I forget. It's somewhere in that terrible realm. And Pirates fans like myself can't go back to they're still in first place, because they're not. They're not a first place team anymore. Milwaukee overtook them. But it's still May. That is the one thing I kept going back to with this streak, is it sucks based off of what we saw from the month of April. But I would much rather this happen now than in September. Like if they were in a winning scenario and then they go 11 out of 12 and lose those games. I think that would make people a lot more upset. And the tools are still there for the Pirates to I don't want to say get back to the April form, because that was just everything going right for them. But even to remotely get back to that form, this team does the basics, I think, the best of anything. Like, if we're talking basics of baseball, they put the ball in play, they're aggressive on the base paths, they create runs like we saw Ji-Hwan Bae do on Friday night. He literally created a run for himself, albeit the throw was terrible at home, but he still created the run. And they're best when they just simplify everything, in my opinion, Gary. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but when they just play simple baseball and aren't trying to overthink and overcomplicate things, I feel like that's where this Pirates team is best.
I mean, simple baseball includes the defensive side as well, and yeah. I think really that's where they've failed the most. I think they've let the pitching staff down, to be honest, with a lot of their terrible defense.
Yeah.
The middle infield needs settled, man. I can't think of a place that's more important right now as far as just settling. And I don't even necessarily care who it is that wins. You got Bae, Marcano, and Castro. I can argue which bats I want to see, but at this point, man, I just want them to choose somebody and stick them there for a couple weeks at shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just let it go. Let's let them stand there and try to learn how to work with a partner that sticks with them at second base. Let's do that for a couple of weeks. Let's see if we can't build a little stability, because I don't see anybody worthy of pulling up to make any kind of impact up here.
Not right now, no.
And I don't really want to see Chris Owings in the lineup 4 or 5 times a week. I don't even necessarily want him as a late inning replacement, because you need offense then worse than you do early sometimes.
Yeah.
To me, the defense is where they really need to step up.
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking at, as you mentioned, the names that you're looking at, Marcano, Castro, and Bae. Castro this week did not play really at all for the most part, the whole entirety of the week. Yeah. Which I did find interesting because of the offensive struggles. If I'm going to pick a bat out of those three, I do think that I would still choose Rodolfo Castro, just because he does have that occasional opportunity to hit a home run. We saw one from Marcano this week too, but I know everybody knows out of those three that Castro is probably going to give you the best power element to just literally will a ball over the fence. Marcano and Bae are great, like Ji-Hwan Bae, especially as a runner, is great on the base paths. But when you're an offense that's struggling like this, you can't exactly hope for a guy to be great on the base paths if he can't get on base.
No, but Castro in particular, they have him in the lab trying to get that left-handed swing where they want it.
Mhm.
And when I say where they want it, I think they'd kill for him to even be like a 225 hitter.
Over there
You
on the
know,
left side, yeah.
he just right now is useless there. And I think they're probably getting pretty close to saying, um, hey, you're just a right-handed bat. So this is probably the calm before the storm with Castro, because I think we'll see him come out and try to hit left-handed a little bit more after they get him to a point where they like him in the shop.
Hmm.
I don't like sitting him for like the majority of a week. I think that's unproductive. But
Yeah.
I understand not wanting him to face live pitching with something that you're just trying out and destroying whatever confidence you're trying to build in his new swing. So I think that's what's going on with him. I could argue that that should happen in the minors, but yeah, because it's not a surprise that that he struggles left-handed. It's been that way since he came up.
Yep.
Castro's got the most impact if they can turn him into something. And right-handed, you can't deny that power, man. So, to me, you got to get that bat back in the lineup. He's got to be able to play somewhere.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how this all would have played out if Cruz never got hurt either. A lot of the things that we've seen from this team this year have been the result of injuries. O'Neal Cruz going down, he was going to be your everyday shortstop, and it would have been foreseen to see who was going to back him up. I would assume a guy like Chris Owings or Marcano would do it, but second base would be even harder to fit these guys in because right now they do have the option of throwing somebody at shortstop, but we have seen the shortcomings of the fact that if you ask me personally, I don't think anybody except Chris Owings on the MLB roster right now can play shortstop every single day. And even Chris Owings is a bit of a question mark. Marcano, he's fine over there, but there have been his moments that he's had too. And I believe he's still on the injured list, but a name that we mentioned a lot in spring training is a name that I would not mind seeing, and it's Jared Triolo. I would not mind it at all. His bat is way better than Chris Owings. He's arguably a better defender than Chris Owings, and definitely, I would say, a better defender than any of the other three guys. It's something at this point that, like as you mentioned, they just need to find a way to fix the middle infield defense, and I don't know how they do it. But you also don't want to keep just throwing names at a hat and just be so inconsistent at the position that nobody sticks.
Well, Triolo is a better defender than anybody. I could argue almost in their system that isn't named Brian Hayes. And I'd love to see him there. Problem is, man, the offense isn't going to be there.
Yeah.
That hamate injury will rob him and sap him of power all season long, even once he comes back. I believe he'll still be able to play defense well, but he's not going to be able to do even what he did with the bat, which wasn't significant to begin with. So it might not be the most optically pleasing call-up ever, whenever it happens, if it ever happens, but he would definitely help on defense, and this team needs it. I can't express enough how frustrating it is for pitchers when they're trying to do their best to give you a good outing, and then there's a string of 2 or 3 errors in a couple innings that give up 2 or 3 runs.
Yep.
I mean, it just destroys the flow of everything you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I can't imagine as a pitcher, well, much lower standards here, but I did used to pitch when I was playing Little League Baseball and travel baseball, and that would be the worst thing is when you walked off the mound after you were pulled and you look up at the scoreboard and you see 3 or 4 runs that weren't even your fault. Like you're leaving the game and you look up and it's 4-1, but you only gave up 1 earned run. It's like, okay, well, how am I supposed to do this? Because I have actually said it on the show quite a bit recently. The hardest thing in baseball to do is get outs. Getting outs is difficult as a pitcher. So when you force your pitcher to have to make extra outs in an inning, if they have to get more than 3 outs in an inning, that is hard to do. You're facing MLB hitters day in and day out. You're facing very good talent every single time you step on the mound. The last thing you want to have to do is make extra outs that don't exist. You want to have to make 27 outs. You don't want to have to make 31 outs.
It's a big reason the Pirates were able to beat Baltimore in
Yeah.
Mitch's game. Besides the way Mitch pitched, Baltimore made mistakes.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, like, they let Brian Reynolds get on with a strikeout, and he
Yeah.
scored, and it
Which was
started
a
the
very
floodgates.
funny play, by the way. It was a
Yeah.
very funny play because you looked at Brian and he was like, "Wait a second, where's the ball at?" And then you could see the first base
Yeah.
coach like, "Come on, run, dude."
He's not getting any Heart and Hustle award for that one, but
No,
he made it.
he'll be all right. I think his contract sadly speaks for himself on that one. But thankfully he was safe because if he was out, that would have been a interesting conversation to have. But it is also so funny that also with the defense too. You have arguably, if not the best defensive third baseman in baseball right now, and dare I say, a top 5 defensive first baseman in Carlos Santana with the way he's played over there. It's just, if they could shore the middle infield back up, limit the mistakes and everything, I mean, you still have the month of May to go here, and especially this week with 2 off days, which, by the way, at Bucks Basement, you're only going to get my game recaps on Tuesdays because they're off Thursday the entire month. But they play Detroit and Arizona this week. 2 teams that are not exactly... Well, Arizona's playing pretty well and has a lot of young stuff going on over there. But Detroit and Arizona, I don't think, are teams that we talked about earlier in the year that they shouldn't be scared of anybody. I still don't think they should be. They know what they're capable of. They've played well before. So, I mean, I just think getting back to the basics and, as you said, fixing defense is going to go a long way for this team. If they can find a way to just go, I'd say, 500 over the rest of the month, I think that's a win in everybody's book. If they're above 500 by the end of this month, I think everybody has to consider that a win, despite the circumstances of how they got there.
Sure. I think this week the most interesting thing to watch play out is going to be Luis Ortiz. He's going to get another start here on Tuesday against Detroit. Vince Velasquez is going to throw a live bullpen today, and he's going to do at least 1 rehab start this weekend, I believe Friday or Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably it for Ortiz for right now. I would imagine he'll go back down. I think you saw in his last start why. But if he really shoves, I don't know. I would pay some close attention to what Johan Oviedo does too,
Mm-hmm.
because he's really been struggling, and I think a couple of his issues are mechanical things that they could probably help him clean up a little bit, just to get a little bit better command of the fastball and start placing that slider again the way he was when he was successful early in the season. It depends. They could actually go with one of those guys and ship out a different one than we expect.
Yeah, and it's very interesting too because, again, the starting pitching has been the strong suit of this team. Pitching in general has been the strong suit of this team, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I think the starting pitching is going to be just fine. I think they have options there, especially if Vince comes back and looks any sort of way that he did before that injury. I mean, even counting that injury, he still was playing very well against a strong Rays lineup. So it's something interesting to watch throughout the week. I think the offense kind of turned a corner a little bit yesterday. I know they only scored 4 runs, but it was also the most runs they scored in the entire month in a game. So consider that turning a corner if you want to consider it turning a corner. But right now, turning a corner with the way the offense is playing, you'll take 4 runs right now, especially if Mitch Keller's on the mound, because all you need to do is score 1 apparently while he's on the mound right now. But Gary, I'm assuming you have 5 thoughts at 5 today and all of your usual stuff going on this week that everybody should know about already.
I'm sure going to try, man. I think I'm going to get them all done this week.
Yeah. Busy guy over here. Busy guy. Same thing over here at the Locked On Pirates podcast. Tomorrow we'll be previewing the Detroit Tigers series. It's just a 2-gamer, which seems like an every year thing against Detroit. I think
it is an every year thing.
Yeah, so I mean, we do that every year with them. We're on the road against them in this 2-game series, and then they head back home to face the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that I find very fun to watch. So I think that'll be a fun series as well. So we'll be covering that series on Friday, Tiger series on Tuesday. We'll have Craig on Thursday, and then Wednesday we'll figure something out to talk about probably after the series. We'll probably recap the 2 games against the Tigers. My name is Ethan Smith. That is Gary Morgan. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. here on the Locked On Pirates podcast, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. And we will see you on the flip side.